In this video, we talk about viewing, sorting, and filtering data in Pandas. Alright, so I forgot to mention real quick, you can download this Jupyter file in the description below this video, so if you want to follow along or play with it, you can download it, check it out. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into it. So let me go ahead and pull in my CSV file real quick to create my data frame, and it's just Tesla stock history essentially. So, we have our date, open, high, low, close, adjusted close, and volume for, a bunch of days that we can go ahead and manipulate basically. So that's our data frame. And the first method I want to go ahead and discuss with you is the head method. And so we'll run it real quick. And what this does is it gets the first n number of rows, and default is 5. So you see we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 5 rows of information. But if you wanted to only do 1 row, you could do that if you wanted to. If you want to do 10 rows, you could do that if you wanted to. And so basically it's a great way to just preview your information, because if you have like a million rows or something like that, you don't want to pull the whole thing in every single time. You might want to just look at the first few rows to see what you're working with. So df head lets you do that. And then there's tail, the tail method, and if you could imagine, it brings in the last 5 rows of data that you have. So here we go. Alternatively, you could throw in 1 if you wanted to for the last row, or 10 for the last 10 rows, and so on. So hopefully that makes some sense. Moving on down here, we have the opportunity to print certain columns. So it's just the df and then brackets with the name of the columns that you want presented. So we'll run that real quick, and boom, there you go. We got our date, open, close columns showing, and then it shows all the rows. So that's hopefully pretty simple to understand. And then we could also print certain rows if we wanted to. Now we print them with df and then our numbers. Now this is not inclusive, and let me show you what I mean. So the 30 is inclusive, like we got 30 here, but then the 40 only goes to 39. Now it is 10 still, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's still showing 10, but it doesn't go to row 40. So that's just something to be aware of. If you're filtering based off of certain rows, the row numbers, like double check your work. Make sure you're getting what you think you're getting. All right, that's just one thing I want to point out. So that's how you could go ahead and print certain rows. Alternatively, you could print certain rows and columns using the lock function, and this is inclusive. So let's run it real quick and look at it real quick. So we got df.lock, and then we have the rows that we want to go ahead and show. So we got 30 through 40. So that's what I mean, that this lock function, or lock or location is essentially what it stands for. Location is inclusive here. So we got 30 through 40, and we filtered for 30 through 40, whereas this 30 through 40 only did 30 through 39. So it's something to be aware of. They kind of function differently. So pay attention how you're doing, pulling your row data. And then we could also have our columns. So I got my date and my low. So basically all my low information for this set of dates, right? And then moving on down, we could go ahead and print a certain row with the ILock function. So note there's ILock, and I stands for integer, so like a number, versus lock, which could be an integer, or it could also be, you could also use words. So like date and low to designate the columns, right? As opposed to numbers. So ILock, you just use numbers. So for the row, if we want to show row 31, it's ILock 31, and there's our information right here. And you notice it looks different than a regular data frame, and that's just how it comes out. So that's something to be mindful of. The presentation of your data could change. And moving on down, if we want to print certain rows and columns with ILock, which is not inclusive, we can do df.ilock, and then we have our rows that we're going to use, and then we have the rows we're going to use. Now you'll notice that with the ILock, again, we're using numbers or integers to specify the columns and the rows, compared to up here with just the lock function, we had the name of the actual column. So that's something to note, that that's how they work. All right, so let's go ahead and run it real quick. So now we're showing rows 30 through 39, again, not inclusive. And then we have our columns, so column 1, which is our open column, and then column 4, which is our closed column. You could also slice your columns if you wanted to. So we could go with like 1 through 4 and run it real quick. And now we're slicing 1 through 4. And if you remember, slices aren't inclusive. So we're now showing column 1, 2, and 3, and not column 4. So just pay attention when you're slicing how things are being sliced. That's just something I want to point out. But as you can see, you can narrow in on the information you want to see by identifying which rows you want and which columns you want to see. All right, moving on down. One thing that's pretty cool is we can go ahead and change the index. So instead of going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yada, yada, we could change it to whatever we want. So to do that, we use the df.setIndex and then whatever column you want as the index. So we can go ahead and run that real quick. And you can see right now it moved our date column from position 0 over to our index position. So now if we move on down, we could go ahead and slice with these new indexes. So we'll go through here, and just like that, we've sliced the month from February 7th to March 7th, 2019. And so that's a pretty cool thing we could do. By changing the indexes, we could slice on those indexes. And let's go on down. So if you want to reset your index back to the numbered system, it's this function right here. So what we're doing is we're resetting our data frame variable with df.resetIndex. So we'll run that real quick. And nothing pops out, but we could go ahead and print it again. And you see now our index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yada, yada. All right, moving on down. And we can also sort by column values. So to do that, we have our data frame variable here, and we got sort values, and then the column we want to sort by, which we're doing high here. Now the default is ascending. So if you cut this out of here and run it real quick, you'll see that it counts up, right? That's ascending. So we got our lowest high here on day 83 or index 83. And then we have our highest one on index 251 at $253. Now if we paste ascending equals false back in there and run it, now we are in descending, right? So we start at the highest and go to the lowest. So that's how you could go ahead and basically sort your columns. Moving on down, you could also sort multiple columns if you want to, and it just goes in order of priority. So we have high, so it'll sort by the high column first, and then it'll go to the date column next if there's a matching high amount. And then of course we have ascending is false, so that means descending, right? All right, so here we go. Run that real quick, and I don't know if there's any days that actually have the same high value, so I don't know if it's going to go on to this next step, but hopefully you can see how this function works regardless. All right, you can also filter columns based on a condition. So we could go ahead and do df and then our square brackets df and then the name of the column and then the condition. So we want to filter our column, our high column, with values greater than 500. So let's run that real quick, and boom, just like that, all of the columns that are greater than 500 have popped up in our data frame output here. So that's how you could filter a column based on a condition. Moving on down, you could also filter columns based on multiple conditions. So let's do it like this. So we have our df, and then we have condition 1. So we have our high is greater than 550, and so this is the and with data frames, the and symbols like that, compared to like typing out and or. And then we want our low to be greater than 500. So in this case, it has to match both of those conditions, high greater than 550, low greater than 500. If we want to do an or, it's just the pipe, so the straight line right here. And now it's an or operator. So we have price greater than 550, or the low price is greater than 500. So you could go ahead and use either of those operators to create your conditional statements. And of course you can get all sorts of crazy fancy with your parentheses and using those to, hone in on whatever you want to see. All right, moving on to the last one for this video. We could show certain columns while filtering based on values. So here we are setting up our columns that we want to see, and then we have applied a filter to what we're showing. So let's run that real quick. So we see our date, low, high columns, date, low, high columns, and then it has to be a low greater than 500. So here's all of the lows over here that are greater than 500, all in one nice, easy to see data frame. And so that's really it for this video on viewing, sorting, and filtering information in Pandas and with data frames. If you found this video helpful in any way, shape, or form, I appreciate any sorts of likes, comments, subscribes, anything like that. And I hope that you have a great rest of the day.